Season 4 Part 2 of Bridgerton is here, and following almost a month's wait, the final 4 episodes, which were centered around the love story of Benedict and Sophie, have reached its end. These 4 episodes provided scandal, a surprising death, secrets still staying buried, the demise of Lady Penwood, and also, a new secret Lady Whistledown author that was sharing the gossip. So in this video, I'll be looking at who that could be and breaking down the deeper themes of the love story that should have divided the ton. So let's get into it. Here is Bridgerton Season 4 Part 2 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Benedict and Sophie. When it came to Benedict and Sophie, their whole love story was centered around the fact that they just couldn't be together. Benedict was always the son that couldn't be tamed, however Sophie was the very person that was able to do so. But if he wanted to be with her, it would tarnish the Bridgerton name as she wasn't from a noble background, and in the eyes of the ton, it would cause irreparable damage to the family as they could have been cast out of high society. This whole season almost felt like it was about bringing to light the pressures that high society put upon those that are in it due to the controlled nature that it has. We saw this with the fact that Benedict couldn't be with Sophie openly, with the way that Francesca was being immediately examined in an invasive way when she said that she was with child, and also the fact that Lord John Stirling's funeral had to be carried out in a specific way in the vision of high society. For the longest time, Violet wasn't willing to allow Benedict to be with Sophie, but as time went on, she saw a part of herself in her son, and that was what made her empathize with him. This is because she used to be the carefree wild child before getting married, so she ultimately gave him her blessing. However, Sophie couldn't stomach being in the Bridgerton household and planned on leaving for America. Not only that, but she also had Lady Penwood on her tail because she wanted her out of the picture because she didn't want Posey to be viewed differently in society if it were revealed that she had an illegitimate sister. When Sophie planned on leaving, that was when she was then arrested for the stealing of the shoe clips and was thrown in jail. Sophie felt like she had nobody in this situation, like she'd felt throughout the entirety of her life. But that wasn't the case, as when the Bridgertons found out that she was going to be sentenced to life in prison, they stormed into the courtroom and fought in her corner. Benedict found out that Sophie was actually the lady during the masquerade ball by finding her lost necklace that was on the floor of his bedroom and remembering that he drew that on her. Plus, he also found her glove inside of her bedroom too. For the longest time, I feel like I'd been wondering if Lady Penwood had been stealing money from Sophie in the will, and that point was proven when Sophie found it, as she saw that her late father left her a dowry that Lady Penwood was using for herself and planned on giving to Lord Stotter in order to be with Posey. This was where a deal was then struck up that Sophie Beck would be made out to be Sophie Gunn, a descendant of the late Lord Penwood, which would have made her Posey and Rosamund's cousin rather than sister. But most importantly, in the eyes of the ton, she'd be viewed as legitimate. This would mean that Benedict and Sophie would be able to stay together and not have to run off to the countryside in order to be together, and that's exactly what we saw. Lady Penwood dropped her charges against Sophie because what she'd done was actually far worse, and she knew that if Violet went to the authorities, she'd be ruined. Sophie and Benedict being together during the ending connected right back to the advice that Benedict was given at the beginning of Season 4 Part 2, and that was, no man or woman truly desires to be hidden. And now, here Sophie was, walking down the aisle in front of everybody. I also thought the fact that Benedict completed the painting of the person that he met at the masquerade ball and giving her Sophie's face just rounded off the love story perfectly. A moment that I also thought was a nice touch was that at the Queen's Ball, the song The Night We Met started playing, and both Benedict and Sophie eventually stood on the stand that they were on in the very first episode where they danced, and he asked her to stay, to which she now said yes. This is because she no longer needed to run off at midnight anymore. She was going to stay forever. It was a beautiful conclusion to the love story, and I think it could be one of my favourites in the recent seasons of Bridgerton. Who is the new Lady Whistledown? Right at the end of the final episode, we heard a voiceover from Lady Whistledown saying that she'd returned, and with us seeing Penelope writing, we were led to believe that it was going to be her. However, when Colin walked in, she said that she was just writing her novel. With a new copy of Lady Whistledown being released, it means that there's an imposter out there and somebody new that's ascended the position of the sharer of gossip. So, who do I think it could be? Well, I think there are 2 options, and the first is that it could be pointing towards Miss Varley. I say this for a couple of different reasons. The first is that even though the voiceover started off as usual, it gradually transitioned into a slightly different tone, one that wasn't as well spoken. And who do we know that is one like that? Well, many of the maids and servants, but one in particular, and that could be Miss Farley. I also feel like that within this season, there were scenes that were shown to us where Miss Farley was standing there and being seen to listen to what was going on. This could be a subtle hint towards the fact that she could potentially be the new Lady Whistledown. Plus another is the fact that she went back into the Featheringtons' home, and with that being the place where Lady Whistledown's work originally came from, it's got me wondering if that's also another clue. Another theory around who the new Lady Whistledown could be is that it could potentially be Lady Mondridge. Lady Mondridge expressed herself just how important gossip was to the Queen in this season, and with her orchestrating a plan that kept the Queen entertained. With her eyes and ears close to the ground because of who and her husband socialise with, I wonder if she could see the value in being the Lady Whistledown imposter. They're just theories for now, but they are two that I think do have some kind of legs to them. Why did Michaela leave? Lord John Stirling's death was something that came out of the blue, and it made a great heart to the story in episode 7 of the show. It really allowed us to see a different side to Francesca and the emotions of grief, despair, and disappointment in herself because she felt like she was a failure, and I thought it was so convincing and harrowing to watch. Over time, she grew closer and closer to Michaela, even though when she first returned at the end of Season 4 Part 1 there was friction. With Francesca asking Michaela to stay with her for a while because she was the only person that understood what she was going through because they both cared about John. When Francesca called upon her during the ending, it was revealed that she'd left. We didn't find out why, but I think it's clear to see that Michaela was developing some kind of feelings for Francesca, and she didn't want to be there if she was going to end up letting those feelings get between them. There were many hints and clues throughout this season that Michaela was attracted to women. The first was with the way that she said that John was her safe space and she felt secure with him and that she'd always go to him. She felt as though he truly understood her. Another was when John told Francesca to not introduce her to any suitors because I believe he knew her secret. And also there was a line of dialogue that she said which was, "Love doesn't always look how one expects." This is because the love that she felt could be seen as different to those in society. So with Francesca holding Michaela's hand at the end of the final episode, Michaela most probably knew that she had to leave because she was developing feelings and she didn't want to cause any kind of friction. My review of the season. I thought this was a strong season of Bridgerton. I still stand by the fact that Queen Charlotte is my favourite installment in the franchise, but this one was up there for me. I think it had the emotional pull and moments where I felt like I could truly understand what the characters were going through. I liked the theme of society saying one thing, but the heart wanting the complete opposite, and the act of going against the grain in order to fulfill that love. It just provided complete drama, and it made the love story feel even more grand and rewarding when they got together in the end. I have seen some criticism about Benedict and Sophie not being that strong of a love story, or their connection being thin, but I didn't really get that. I actually felt like the connection was strong between them because all they wanted was to just be with each other. In terms of the other elements of the story, I liked Penelope's desire to lay Lady Whistledown to rest because she wanted to focus on being a mother and giving her attention to her family and other ventures like writing a novel. The understanding that her words held such power and could cause damage, pain and suffering was a weight that she just couldn't carry, so it was interesting to see her battling with that. I also thought that Queen Charlotte and Lady Danbury's relationship being put to bed was an emotional moment too. In watching Queen Charlotte, we've seen just how much they've done with each other over the years, and in seeing the Queen being brought to tears, it was a moment that made me well up too. Episode 7 was probably one of my favourite episodes in the season. The way that the subject of grief was handled was really well done, and the immersion that it had with us hearing things from Francesca's perspective, and her also feeling the weight of not truly knowing what to do whilst being paralysed with grief was heartbreaking to watch. I also thought the scene where she was being examined was just harrowing, and the uncomfortable nature of what she was going through was really brought to light. This was the episode where we saw just how good of an actor she was, and it was one of the best performances in the series for me, so I hope she gets more of a focus in the next season. The Bridgerton stories, whilst they are extremely dramatic, they do make some entertaining love stories, and I do find that the writing in the show does truly know how to draw emotion out of the viewer. It connects to the core feeling that's embedded within all of us. We just want to be loved, and we want somebody to give our love to, and that's why I think it's so relatable. Was this the best installment in the Bridgerton franchise? Personally, I did really enjoy it. It's not my favourite, but I do think it's up there for me. What do you think? So, there you have it, Bridgerton Season 4 Part 2 Ending Explained.